Hello and welcome to another episode of Flying High with Flutter. I'm your host, Alan Wyma. I'm finally back from my long holiday. So you'll see, actually, it looks like my stuff fell down behind me if you could see me. I used to have some nice hexagons, but they all fell down. So I literally just got out of the quarantine hotel today. So I'm happy that we have a new episode ready to be recorded with our good guest, Mitch Koko. I think that's your alias online, right?
Yeah, well, like my last name's Ko, so it's just Coco.
Just the
Yeah,
extra Co.
yeah, little nickname from high school, I guess.
I forgot to ask how I should best introduce you, but I guess I can say you are a YouTuber or YouTubist, or I don't know how you want to say that, but you have a lot of really interesting videos. I was just watching a couple before the episode today, and you have one about 30 minutes about how to get into Dart in 30 minutes. That was pretty good. And you have quite a few episodes with David Chen, who was a previous guest on the show. I think I talked enough, so maybe I'll leave this over to you. Why don't you give a quick self intro?
Yeah, hey guys, my name's Mitch. I don't know if I would identify myself as a YouTuber. I mean, I make YouTube tutorials related to Flutter, so that's probably what most people know me for on the internet. But beyond that, I didn't actually have a full computer science background, so this is kind of my way of like learning myself how to code and make apps. Ultimately, I want to make different apps just for myself to sort of, make money and to be independent. And I don't know, it's just enjoyable for me with the kind of creativity aspect. And I had a full journey of like how I ended up to this position of like actually choosing to, use Flutter over like other technologies and all that. But so, happy to get into whatever you want to get into. But yeah, actually, I guess I would start with when I was from high school. I was like very good at math, and so when I was going to university, like my thought process was just I like math and I want to make money, so I want to study finance. That's the extent of the thinking. Very very simple. But yeah, and in uni, I just kind of slowly realized I don't want to be a banker. I don't want to like live that corporate investment banking life. Although I'm happy to know about the knowledge from my own personal investing, but sort of something I want to do for the rest of my life. It's like, nah. So I kind of took computer science subjects pretty late, um, but I still finished my finance and all that stuff. So I was luckily I was kind of able to do some of the fundamental computer science subjects, like data structures and algorithms and stuff. So um, I just kind of get a lot of other people to help me out with some difficult computer science related topics. But I guess like if I had to describe myself, I would kind of feel like a hybrid between a designer and a developer, or like a designer and an engineer. I really like the way things look and like the UI UX part of it. I would say probably uh, like front end development, and I was making a bunch of games. Just a lot of random stuff, a lot of different rabbit holes I went into. And lately, I've been trying to kind of improve my back end knowledge, which I would say is my weakest part, but I kind of want to make a app with like users and all this stuff. So, I dabbled with Firebase, but then it's like, okay, I feel like I need to go beyond this. And, what's the kind of the sustainable long-term way to do this? And yeah, I'm just, I consider myself a student of the game. Like I'm not an expert by any means. Like I'm always sort of trying to learn. There's so much to learn. I feel like the more I know, the more I realize I don't know anything uh, kind of feel. And with the YouTube channel, it's kind of a way to like teach myself and have it like recorded somewhere for me to refer back to. And if other people like watch it, then cool. If it helps them out, sometimes it's useful when they point out my mistakes, or like, I'll kind of, I'm obviously being vulnerable about showing my code and all that. So if people are like, "Nah, you're not doing this right," and they point it out, I'm so happy because, throw my ego to the side. It's like I'm just here to learn. So yeah, you can take that wherever you want. But yeah, that's kind of a brief intro about me.
Yeah, I mean, okay, this is pretty interesting. So you said that you were looking into finance, but then you decided to go into programming. I'm just trying to understand, like, how do you make that change? I mean, they're really two different things.
100%, yeah.
Although because I did do some teaching, like part time, and some of my students were like, "Oh, we're actually going to go into banking." But now to go into banking, you have to know Python and you have to know some programming because that's basically it.
Right, yeah.
And when I was in banking, I had to actually translate Excel sheets into code. Man, Excel sheets are more code like than I think actual coding, because that Excel programming is freaking tough.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone probably feels it. Like technology is probably in every like every sector of any industry. You'll see like some involvement of tech, and you're completely right. Like even Excel spreadsheets, which finance people use a lot. You put like formulas in and all that. Like it's basically coding. But anyway, like what you were saying about how I transitioned from something like finance to coding and all that, like yeah, that was like a painful soul search moment for me, just kind of growing up and kind of figuring out what I want to do with my life. But when I was in university, so finance is part of commerce, which is business, and there was a lot of startup competitions going around, and I always wanted to, make something happen in the world. So I was kind of joining these startup competitions, and what's funny about startup competitions is because it's in because you're making a business, 95% of the participants are business students, and like the rest 5% are like programmers, software engineer, maybe biomed, something like that. And so I was surrounded by too many like quote unquote business people, where like so much of the focus is like making like a pitch deck, like a PowerPoint to present to like an investor or something, which I fully respect that kind of process and all that. But like I felt like the emphasis was so heavy on that side, and I kept seeing this pattern, which is you got $1 billion app idea in your pitch, and every group, including my group, it's like at the end of the pitch deck, it's like, oh, now we just have to hire a software engineer. Like that's basically what you're raising money for, to hire a software engineer to make um, the damn thing. And so like I said, I was kind of soul searching at this point, and I was like, I don't really want to be a banker or investment banker. No disrespect, but that's just not for me. Um, and I was like, I'm just generally interested in tech, like phones and gadgets and all this stuff. Um, and so at this point, just as an aside for fun, I was programming Android apps with Java, which was like my first language. And that's when I kind of started to pick up computer science subjects at uni, and kind of took it more seriously. So I wanted to be someone who got their hands a bit dirty in the tech, and not just be that kind of business guy who's just sort of outsourcing everything. You know what I mean? Like, especially in this day and age, it's like there's so much you can do with with a smaller team than you needed back in the day. And I kind of watched my dad go through a lot of his own online business venture journey thing, website stuff, and I kind of grew up uh, seeing that a lot, and thinking about my own things. And like I'm 26 now, so the whole social media landscape, and we can talk about YouTube. You wanted to talk about that. There's so many things in tech that's I feel so privileged to be in, and I just kind of I just love this. Love whatever we're doing. Like what's really funny is like I want to make an app at the end of the day and like get users and all that stuff, right? And like that's the ultimate goal. And to get there, I have like so much to learn, and so I just keep sharing that knowledge of what I learn. And funnily, like I don't know if it's like ironic or what, but like funnily, like that's what is making money. Like I haven't even sold an app before. You know what I mean? I mean, I put like free apps and stuff, like calculators, games and stuff on Play Store and all that, but like I haven't made like most of my money through selling an app, which ultimately I want to do. But you know, there's a lot of other opportunities that just keep rising. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, but I think I mean it's quite interesting because when you have the skills to create an app, you still need to have the idea. And also having it, there's like two parts of this, right? I think that are not programming. One is the idea. The other one is like the more like the execution, like how you like market it and how you get the users, right? Because it's not difficult to make something with code, but to get people to actually use your stuff is really difficult.
Right. I would argue like I think for the longest time had the similar train of thought to you, which is like it's all the idea, and I'll be sitting in my room, trying to devise the genius plan, like the perfect app or whatever. But I feel like it's kind of like 10% idea and 90% execution. And also along the way of executing, kind of like a shitty V1, V2, you kind of like change, you can kind of pivot, and you learn new things along the way. And that's why I'm really trying to learn coding, because that's what for me pushes like my goals forward in what I want to make and stuff like that. It's I could sit there and make a PowerPoint all day. Like it's you know it's the plan. It's you should write it down for sure, but at some point someone's gonna go out there and make it. And um Yeah, but you're right. I mean, at the end of, I mean, it is a, what do they call, like, meritocracy. It's like, yeah, if you don't have a good idea, then yeah, for sure it's not going to work. But it's like, sometimes on the bias toward action, people end up, I think, finding more nugs along the way, like more kind of golden nuggets along the way that you kind of almost accidentally find in some situations where, um yeah, I mean, I listen to a lot of Paul Graham. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but like, he's like the Y Combinator guy, which is, I don't know if you call it like an accelerator or incubator in San Fran, and like Airbnb and stuff came out of there. So like, I listened to a lot of that, like, knowledge about startups and all that. And so, one of the things they always push is that MVP, which Flutter is amazing at, and that's why I love Flutter, because, without committing so much, like, get full iOS engineer, full Android engineer, and the whole company and the whole shebang. It's like, oh, just get a couple smart guys, or like a 2 to 5 kind of, size team of smart individuals, and they can just test out an idea. And if it works, then at that point you can figure out, okay, how are we going to scale this and all that. It becomes like a good problem to have, because, like you said, you can make something and people might not jive with it, and you've spent the last, however long, however many months making it. And so, I mean, it's a hard game for sure, but it's a game I kind of like, especially if you like being creative and you just want to make a lot of random stuff, even just for yourself, whether it sells or not. I just love it. I kind of always encourage younger people to learn coding, like, now, because I learned kind of late. Like, I learned when I was like, I started learning coding for real when I was like 20. And that's pretty late. Some people, like, from like when they're teens and like all that. So I wasn't one of those people. But if I look back and I look at my younger self, I'm like, start coding, which I actually tried, by the way, when I was 14, trying to code an iPhone app, and it was so hard. So I kind of detached from it for like a lifetime, and it took a lifetime and soul searching to come back to, I guess, what I originally wanted to do.
Well, that's actually the topic I want to kind of get into is like, how did you start programming? So it's interesting. You actually started, you tried to start, I guess you can kind of say, back when you said 14, right? With iOS.
Yeah, yeah. That was like when the first iPhone came out. So it's like 2006 or 7 or something like that. And so I was like, yeah, I was like 14, or, around that age. And yeah, my dad was like, oh, you should try making an iPhone app because the iPhone just came out. Sounds like a cool idea. I guess the first iPhone didn't have an app store, but whenever the app store came out, just, and he bought me like this course or something. And then, yeah, I remember learning about some basic concepts like the word array and stuff, but I didn't know what the hell was going on. And, that kind of demotivated me a little bit, I think. It was like, I thought I wasn't one of those, like, unless it comes easy to me, like, I thought, like, oh, that's what it means to, like, feel natural in something. It's like, but nah. Um, yeah. Later, like, this is kind of, you know, tangential and kind of long backstory, but, my dad is kind of like a math guy, like a math teacher. And so we had a sort of tutoring company to, that's kind of how we sustained our life. And so I'm really into math. Like, I do a lot of math teaching. Um, and so that's kind of goes hand in hand with what I do with coding on YouTube. It's like, I just love teaching. One interesting experience I had with teaching is I thought I was really good at math in high school, but I realized I kind of really understood math once I started teaching someone else. Like, trying to get not just my own brain to understand, but trying to get another brain to understand this idea. Um, like, yeah, I learned a lot from that. And so that's kind of what I do with the coding thing. Like, when I first started my YouTube channel, which was 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't know anything about Flutter. Like, it's not like I had this wealth of knowledge and like, let's make videos. It's every video I learned, you know what I mean? And, I'm sure, like, if you go back to some videos, even some videos like that I post these days, it's like, it's not perfect. It's not like, the most optimized code or anything. It's like, I'm sure there's better ways to do things. But this is my way to learn. Like I said, a lot of people comment and help me on some certain, there's a better way to do that, Mitch. Like, or like, there's some notation I never knew about. It's like, oh shit, like, oh, I was doing it the long way the whole time, but thanks for that. It's like a gem. And since I don't like work at a tech company or anything, um, this is sort of like my way to, interact with people and, just show my GitHub and all that. And yeah, but yeah, I still have a long way to go. Like, that's why, with some certain friends around, like David and stuff, like, they're so much smarter than me, and so kind of I absorb a lot of their knowledge, like because yeah, I'm still got a lot to learn.
All right, and I think I want to make that clear. I think we talked about David before we started recording, right? So David Chen was a previous guest on here who we basically it's a mutual contact, but we I discovered it recently, right? So we didn't know each other from David. It just kind of happened that we just both knew David. So I just want to make that clear to the audience.
Yeah, I came on here because David came on here. David, is a friend of mine, so yeah, that's kind of how I found you as well. So
So this second time, so you gave up, and I understand actually because when iPhone first came out, you had to do reference counting too, which I think is really difficult. You know, the retain and whatever retain release or something.
I don't know, man. I have no idea. I wasn't successful in making an array, so
Okay. But then you went back to it when you were like 20, right? Now, did you? I don't think you went back to straight using Flutter, right? Because Flutter, I don't think is even 6 years old, or at least not widely known at 6 years, right? So what were you working with?
yeah. So Java was my first language, so that's why I kind of naturally just
I
started
feel bad for
making
you right
Android
now
apps.
because that's painful. Sorry, I have to say
Right?
that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a painful first language.
Right. No, it's okay. I think yeah, it's when you go to uni now or college, it's like all Python now as a first language, and yeah, I mean, just on that note with the Java thing, yeah, I remember first learning Java. It's like so many words. It's like public static void main. I'm like, oh, so like so many things going on. But eventually, things the wheels start clicking and you start understanding what each word means, and like your kind of conceptual, understanding grows. And I don't know, I like parentheses and brackets and all that. But anyway, so what were you asking? What were you asking me about? Oh yeah, how did I start coding?
Yeah. So the second time, right, or the most recent time when you were 20.
Yeah, yeah. Once I became a bit older, Java was my first language, and so I was able to make Android apps with Java. I don't even think Kotlin was a thing, or not to my memory. It was just like, oh, Java, you can make Android apps. And when I say I made Android apps, it's like literally I made a calculator and maybe like a snake game or something like that. And then like uh, coming from that sort of startup and business mindset, and I wanted to just make MVPs and test stuff out, test different ideas out. It kind of annoyed me that it kind of bummed me out that I had to choose either be an Android engineer or iOS engineer. Like I had to make a decision at this point, right? It's okay, I got to commit. Do I want to make Android apps, and kind of maybe down the line I can pick up the other language. And same thing with iOS. It's like, okay, start with iOS and kind of be locked in that ecosystem, and that kind of bummed me out. And that's when I looked at different solutions, and that's when I found this whole cross-platform, phenomenon. And I didn't even go as deep as like comparing like Xamarin and stuff. I only knew about that and Ionic later. The only thing that was on my radar was React Native and Flutter. And Flutter was a bit newer, made by Google, and the other one was made by Facebook. I don't know if this is like a irrational, emotional decision, but something about Flutter just looked cleaner. And anyway, I tried Flutter, and one thing I loved about it was just easy to get started. I mean, I never tried React Native, so I can't really compare in that respect. But once I just started with Flutter, I just started to get going, and so I just never looked back. it was just it was just great, and at least the peace of mind for me is that it's good at mobile apps. Like because it's all cross-platform now. Now they're doing desktop and web and all that. And me personally, I'm not too worried or too concerned of having great experience on desktop and Mac. I mean, it'll be great to have down the line, but for me, like right now in the near future, just having good mobile, that's pretty much what I care about. So, um, yeah. So yeah, I just started learning Flutter.
And I think learning Flutter, I mean, since the second time around you started learning Java, for me, like I felt like I was back in Java/JavaScript land when I started learning Flutter and Dart. Did you feel like a little bit at home with everything? Because there is some of the keywords there.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I mean, when I was learning Dart in Flutter, to me, it felt the exact same. I was like, oh, and I mean, obviously, there's some small uh, things in Dart that you can't do with Java, like notation wise, and like sometimes I still write like the Java way, like there's like the equal, and like when you want to execute like a function, and you can just execute it right then and there without opening up the curly braces. Um, yeah, like I should use that more, like in the Dart way, but I don't know. Sometimes my hands are like so ingrained with Java, so like um, yeah, I kind of need to. that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes like on YouTube, someone will comment and be like bro, like you can do this notation, and it's like, oh, thank you, like helps me learn.
Yeah, that was like the one thing I noticed like out of the bat. I was like, wow, this feels a lot like a nice mixture because for me, I don't like JavaScript. I don't like Java. What I do like about Java is the type safety, right? With the typing, the strong typing.
Mm.
What I don't like about Java is the boilerplate. Like if I want to make a program, I have to make a freaking class, which to me still sounds outrageous. And I'm sure that must make you go a little bit weird too when you're like, well, what the hell? I have to make a class and with a public static main. And to me, maybe now you don't think, maybe at the time you didn't think too much about it, but like if you come from another language and then go to Java, you're like, well, what the hell is this? Because I can't think of any other popular language that makes you make a class in order to start the program. Like if there is one, I would love to hear about it in terms of something that's not on the JVM. But that just blows my mind, and I always thought that was ridiculous. And I always never knew what to call it.
I think Java has the most boilerplate required to execute a Hello World like Hello World app. You need the most to get that goal. Like there's so much setup required. Hello World.
Yeah, definitely. But what I understand about Java is it's not meant to be like people at home. You guys can let me know what you think. But like I was told from somebody that like Java is great for like big companies because it like forces you to write a lot of stuff, and supposedly that's a good thing for big companies, but not so good obviously for startups. I forget what the terminology that they use for it. It kind of made sense, but this is some guy who told me. I don't know how much he really knows. Going back to the syntax, right? So you started picking up Flutter. I'm sure you just went straight to Flutter, right? I don't think I know many people that went from like Dart and to Flutter. It's like you always go to Flutter and then Dart.
I only knew that was a thing through Flutter. Like I don't even to this day, I don't even know what Dart is used for outside of Flutter. Like what is it used for?
Quite a lot of things. There's some people who are using. So there's something called ServerPod that's using a backend written, but still has a Flutter
Oh,
piece to it.
okay.
Supposedly there's just straight Dart written for like Google AdSense. I think. I don't think I've ever seen it or anybody outside of Google's ever seen it. But another thing too is SCSS. Have you heard that before? Sassy CSS. Okay, so it's a CSS preprocessor, which like basically you write CSS with this special CSS like syntax language. You know what CSS is, right? At least. Okay. So when you have a web page, you have two things that basically you'll see. One is HTML, which is just like
Oh,
the structure.
CSS. Sorry, yes. You mean HTML, CSS. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Sorry. Yeah. So Sassy CSS or SCSS is like a way that like an extended version of CSS. And you never written before, right?
I have in high school. I have in high school.
Okay, but you never written SCSS, right?
No, definitely not.
Okay. But the processor for that to change it from SCSS to CSS is actually written in Dart. It used to be C, but now they changed it over to Dart, which is kind of interesting. I remember when I saw that, I was like, why the hell would you choose Dart? It's such an odd, weird language that nobody's using. But yeah, that's one thing. The other thing too is it's actually can compete with C in Rust, if that makes sense to you. Like I saw some benchmarks, and it's can get quite fast. Um, so yeah, there's people who are using it, but for sure the biggest one I can think of that's not Flutter related would be SCSS. But I'm sure there must be some other stuff.
Right, right.
Okay, so you were learning Flutter, Dart, because obviously they're so related. Um, like, did you try to learn like React and all these other things, like React Native, or did you just start with Flutter and that was it? Just kind of clicked.
Yeah, I mean, if Flutter didn't really work out for me, then I would have to, yeah, I would go back and check out some of the other ones like React Native. But yeah, I just never needed to. Yeah, but that's not because I'm pushing the limits of Flutter. I think it's just like I still have like a lot to learn to like, especially on the back end side, there's a lot to learn. So it's like for me, it's like that's I'm talking as some some person who's like not like an expert in this field. So for me personally, it's good, and I really enjoy like making like the UIs. Like when you go Dribble and you just like make the front end of the UI. I love doing that, and for that, I think Flutter is like again, I haven't used other languages or other frameworks, so I can't really compare. But I think Flutter is so good at making the UI. Like I could just I used to like have this thing where I would do one UI every morning for 30 days just to learn, the widgets and all that. I would just go dribble and pick a UI, like some nice looking design that someone else did on Dribble, and I would just like clone it essentially. And so I did that for like quite a while now, and I don't know, it's just like an actual enjoyable experience for me just cloning those UIs, and that's what like I really like spend a lot of time doing now, which is like kind of the idea phase of a business, and I could whip up like a front end of the app, like basically like the skeleton, and then I can give it to my friend over here who's really good at backend, and he will just hook it up and do all that. And we have like a very complementary skill set, I reckon. And so I can just do what I'm good at and what I enjoy, but I still want to learn about the other side. So I'm still always asking him, and like, teach me how to do backend, and like, I want to get off Firebase, like, but yeah, I mean, lot to learn. He was like schooling me the other day on the whole SQL and no SQL, and like breaking it all down for me. So yeah, I've been learning a lot in this past couple like weeks and months, to be honest.
Oh, I mean, like, what is your final goal? Because yeah, I mean, do you still want to stick in Flutter, or do you want to get more like what I would call full stack, where you're actually doing a separate backend? Like, kind of like, what's your kind of goal?
Right. Well, so kind of the ultimate, I guess, goal is I want to create like an app and create a business around that, you know, that makes money with users and stuff. And so I just try to execute on a couple different ideas that I have, try to solve some problems in my life. I do a lot of tutoring and teaching math, and so like in that kind of space, I always kind of looking at different ways to help kids learn. That's kind of big part of who I am. Seeing as my parents have ran a whole tutoring company and all that, so I have a lot of like kind of thoughts on education in itself. So that's kind of like the ultimate goal. But like my kind of sub goals along the way is I want to get better at programming. Like you said, trying to become closer to a full stack engineer is something that one day I aspire to reach. But at the same time, like nowadays, just kind of linking up with different people and kind of old friends that they actually start to pick up Flutter. And that's what I find really interesting. I used to be the only person in my life that I know that uses Flutter, and I have to go on the internet to like find my people, right? But nowadays, like a lot of just young people my age, they just pick up Flutter and they find my videos and realize that it's me, and then we're just kind of tossing ideas back and forth. And I mean, when you're young, it's like that's what I always kind of preach to these guys. It's like you, I feel like some people have the mindset of like work at a big corporate company now, and one day I'll start a company, or like one day I'll do it when I get the experience or whatever it is. But I always think about it the opposite way, where it's like I feel like you could just get a job anytime. When you're like 30, 35, 40, it's like there's something very advantageous about being young. And I'm 26, and even these days, because I teach young kids, and they're always teaching me about TikTok and all this, how to use this stuff. It's like something that was so natural to me nowadays is kind of slipping away in my fingers. And for me, I have to like study like all this social media, like trying to put my get my numbers up, like how to do YouTube well and all this stuff. And so yeah, so like with the YouTube thing as well, I didn't really expect my YouTube to really kind of grow at all. Like it wasn't really for other people to see. Like I said, that's kind of, I think that was an emotional protection that I did for myself. It's like, because sometimes when people want to start a YouTube channel, they kind of have the fear that no one's going to watch it. And at the beginning, no one is going to watch it. But kind of what I always tell a person who wants to start a new channel is don't do it for the views. I mean, it's, sounds kind of obvious, but it's kind of hard to digest in some respect. It's like, just choose something that you want to do anyway, and you're just putting it online. And if people gravitate towards it, then that's your people. Like, you don't have to go out there and kind of worry about. I mean, there are haters and all that, so it is a sort of personal comfort zone that you do have to get out of. But every time I do step out of my comfort zone, only good things have happened. Like, of course, I'll have some times where some people, like you were telling me as well at the beginning of the show, where you would see some of my tutorials and you would disagree with some, whatever it is. And I like that. Like, and I'm not embarrassed about it, because I want you to tell me and then I'll learn. Like, And that's what all the people do on kind of the comments, because I'm not an expert at all. Like, I want to be one day, but I'm still really like relatively new. And I mean, I started coding when I was 20, so it's been 6 years, but still, like, in Flutter space, it's like everything's changing so much, and like kind of my entrepreneurial spirit keeps like, you know, lighting a flame, and everything that's related to Flutter, it just kind of helps me in what I want to ultimately achieve. You know, sometimes like when people talk down on Flutter, they talk about what Flutter can't do. And obviously, if you have a cross-platform framework, you're going to sacrifice some level of depth in some capabilities, like the new iPhone iOS like lock screen widget comes out, and you want to make that. Yeah, you might have to dig into the native code to do that. But just in general, there's so many sort of business ideas that people have that doesn't require such a heavy engineered app, you know. And Flutter is just so amazing at, as I said before, the MVP stage of it. You know, just getting maybe like 1 to 1,000 users. And this is another thing I kind of always love talking about, which is the 1,000 true fans. I don't know if you've heard of that. Like, I'm happy to talk about it if you're not.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just something that's really, it should speak to a lot of Flutter developers, which is, I feel like Flutter is the spirit of the independent developer, like a small team trying to get something off the ground. I think that's kind of where Flutter's strength lies, and it's very popular framework for those type of people. And sometimes we get caught up on YouTube and all these numbers where you feel like you need to get like 1 million like views or 1 million downloads to truly make money or make success. But this guy, Kevin Kelly, always talking about this 1,000 true fans, which is you make something and all you need to focus on is just focus on 1,000 people to truly love it, as opposed to trying to get 1 million people to sort of kind of like it. And the thing about this that I love is when you get 1,000 people to truly love it, then they'll tell their friends, and you know, it's like exponential growth, and you'll get to your million or whatever it is. But I love that like kind of simplified thinking of just focus on the people in front of you. And the people that I teach in real life with like math and stuff, I always keep them in my mind when I'm making an app. And that helped me a lot. And kind of Paul Graham talks about this a lot, kind of helped me out a lot, which is when I'm thinking of an app idea, it's like you have this imaginary, sometimes like this imaginary customer, or you're thinking about too many customers, I guess. But if you just try to think about, okay, the guy you're actually serving in front of you, or someone you know that has a problem, and you think about that real person, things become really concrete. And then I'll start like talking, you know, with my friends and all that about, you know, what we could make, you know, pay that 149 Apple developer fee, you know, like let's get the app out there kind of thing. And yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, that $100 fee is it's not nice, but it's not that. It's a business is not expensive. As a person, it depends on your finances, right? I mean, if you're a student, it could be. If you're a student in like Thailand, yeah, it could be really expensive. Student USA still could be expensive, but you might be able to ask your parents or something for it.
Yeah, it's just don't eat for 3 days, or 3 meals rather. Like, and you don't have to do that all at once, but like just have 2 meals a day for 3 days instead of 3 meals a day. You'll pay that fee.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want something, you'll find a way to get to it, right?
Yeah.
Actually, we do have a question from the audience.
Yes,
I'm not too
sir.
sure how to say his name. I think it's Andra Oskrovich. Maybe I'm wrong. Um, he's interested. He says he's also a beginner like yourself, and he really wants to know more about architecture. And he's curious about what is your ideas and thoughts about architecture. How do you learn it? It didn't say all this stuff, but that's I think really interesting. Is like how do you learn about architecture? What kind of state management are you using? These kinds of questions, because that's, I mean, if you architecture something wrong, it could get you into trouble, right? I think you've already realized that.
Yeah.
So he just said, don't try to pronounce his name. But yeah, I mean, what is your thoughts about that, and how do you learn about it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that is also a topic that I'm like literally currently trying to figure out for myself. And I've just dabbled in, you know, the whole like provider, GetX, and all these different stuff. And most of my knowledge from it comes from Reddit, like getting people's opinion on Reddit. But nowadays, like, because I talk to David a lot now, and actually recently we were talking about it. Like, he was basically like teaching me, and his thing, which I found really interesting, was for you to not use any of those packages and just sort of make your own one with a stream builder. And kind of like I jotted all this down, and I need to like work on it. Um, but yeah, like I learned a lot from him through like how to make your architecture good and the state management thing. And that was a very recent thing I learned. Like just he told me about kind of the stream builder and how to make it. He gave me these 3 things to look out for. So yeah, honestly, outside of that, I don't have much to offer here. But yeah, what about for yourself?
I mostly just make it up, to be honest.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
really.
right.
I mean, initially, yeah, I made it up. So I copied like the style I have for the back end I have. So I like to do my own custom back ends. And so how I structure the back end, I try to mirror that on the app, and it makes it easier in case you're going back and forth. You know where things are.
Yeah.
But I do see some people kind of being Java like, where okay, I got presenters, I got models, all this kind of stuff, services. To me, I mean, the thing about architecture and all this kind of stuff, it's like go for what's easier for you, how your team works. That's basically the big thing for me. Which state management, I just stay away from GitX because there's a big backlash against it, and all I hear is negative stuff. And I think it is probably one of the few, if not the only, major state management solution out there that doesn't go like the Flutter way, if that makes sense, where it's like they try to like hide things like with the context and all that kind of stuff. So I just never use it. Mostly I'm doing block stuff. I find it much easier. I do have one app. What do you call it? One app with what is that other one? Riverpod. Find
Riverpod,
that one
yeah.
to be much more difficult. I don't know why. Maybe it's just myself. But I know everybody else is using Riverpod. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I think you can probably use anything, whatever works better for you. But that's just my own personal opinions. I know there is. I think Flutter finally has like a skeleton where they kind of show you how to set up your structure. But I've never followed that style before. And I think Very Good Ventures has a CLI where they also do something similar, if not the same as what Flutter does. You know, I take a lot of courses. Like whenever I see a Flutter course, I usually buy it or I take it, and then I learn from it, and then usually it changes my mind about something, and then I just learn a little bit every single time.
I think you initially actually messaged me about um the game, like a snake game.
Yeah. Games. I mean, are you using the Flame engine for that one?
No, I'm not. I actually, well, I don't make games anymore, but when I was learning Flutter about like a year or two ago, I was essentially trying to learn the widgets and all that. And I think I heard Bill Gates talk about just make tic-tac-toe. And I was like, rows, columns, and containers, surely I could make tic-tac-toe, right? So I was like, okay. And I started making that, and it kind of just went on a rabbit hole. I didn't really intend on it, but I just started making, like all the old games, like the old school, like Pac-Man and Snakes and Space Invaders and Pong. I even kind of went a bit like not 3D, but still 2D plane, but it's like games like Pokemon. Um, but I never used a Flame engine, like that Flame engine. I kind of checked it out, but my goal with making these games wasn't actually necessarily to make a game. It was just I just wanted to learn how Flutter works and stuff. So I didn't want to use a package. I just kind of that's why that was my whole playlist that initially I think got interest, which is just Flutter games from scratch. Like I would just make it completely from scratch, just pure like Flutter. Um, and yeah, after that I started making a bunch of UIs because that's what I actually wanted to do. I want to make apps with users and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, Firebase was kind of helpful for the Snake game when I wanted to make it more online and kind of store some high scores and display it back so that we can see other people playing it. And I just used like Firebase hosting, and it was really easy to set up and stuff. So yeah, I just did that. But right now I'm learning how to do some more something that's not necessarily Firebase. Like I said, I got schooled the other day about SQL versus NoSQL. So I think I have to go this SQL route. So I got to kind of put my glasses on. I need to study a bit.
Happy to hear that because I'm very anti NoSQL, but I
Right.
have yet to find a project that I enjoyed that's done with NoSQL, or at least like schemaless.
I think your guest yesterday, I was listening to it today. I think he was like a Firebase. It was interesting. He was working at Lyft and all that. Came out and he's using Flutter and Firebase, right? Like,
Yeah, he's using Firebase, and that's pretty interesting. Yeah. But there's a lot of companies that are using Firebase actually. Like one of my clients right now is actually using Firebase. I'm trying to talk them into something else, and I think they're open to it. But let's see what happens. I think the only other one I think that's really interesting is Supabase.
Ah, Superbase.
That one is super interesting. They use Postgres, which is a SQL, and you actually have this designer scheme and everything. So you can, if you want to be in the same, like if you like to work with Firebase, but you want to work with structured data, highly recommend take a look at Supabase. I think it could be worth your interest.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. I was curious. How is your YouTube journey going? You've putting a lot of hard work. I think like it's hard to actually be really like produce a lot, a lot, a lot. You know, I know what that feels like, and I think you've been producing quite a lot of episodes. How's that going for you?
We aim for one a week. Yeah, so it's not easy. It's not easy to do, but yeah, there's ways to get around it. Like record a lot and then have a small break, and then slowly release the episodes. That's one of the tricks I usually do. Um, yeah. Otherwise, yeah. I mean, but we're here to talk about your YouTube journey, right? So with your YouTube stuff, I mean, it's really like all of your episodes, are they only just for you, or do you ever do any episodes for your audience?
I mean, look, it's obviously the back of my mind. I know people are watching it, so it's like I have. It's not purely just like what I would do for myself, but it's like a Venn diagram of both. Mainly it's for myself. Just what my kind of in that moment, my thirst of like curiosity that I need to quench. Sometimes like I'll just have like different phases of like different parts of the app and different widgets, or maybe it's a package or something that I found cool. Um, and yeah, I just make a lot of different. Like I went through a whole phase of like one of them was just widget of the day, and then one of them was just like a whole bunch. After that was just package of the day. Like I said, I made Flutter games from scratch, and I had that whole phase. Um, and I kind of like one challenge I've been facing lately. I need to produce more YouTube videos, but one challenge I've been having is like there's stuff I want to make uh that I don't necessarily want to make public. You know what I mean? Like it's your kind of your own thing, right? Like your main app, I guess, your main business, and um, but I also need to have this other parallel content producing idea of what tutorial to make, and usually it goes hand in hand. Like I'll learn something that I need to learn for my own app, and I'll make a tutorial for it. But just kind of time wise, it's like I get a lot of pressure these days of like I want to just kind of go full time on my own app sometimes, as in kind of like not the YouTube. Sometimes like I'm just like like it's been like I said, my last upload was 12 days, and you should have at least a once a week cadence, maybe even more. So I need to get back on that wheel, but it's a lot of random stuff coming up in life, and like I said, just even like when it comes to productivity, like when I sit down and okay, I have 3 hours to code, it's like sometimes I just want to spend it on my app, and that can take a lot of time to grow and make work that like maybe I don't have the time to make a video, and or maybe I'll make a video and it's pretty like a bad quality video, or it's like a really useless video or something, and I don't want to do that. So that's kind of been a challenge I've been balancing. So yeah, that's kind of why I was just asking you about your cadence, because I'm sure you have your own full-time job and your own stuff to do, but then you also have this podcast now, and so like and then you have to be consistent with it, right? And yeah, just how do you deal with it, like your time management?
Yeah, time management is not my best suit, but I think the big thing is you just have to do it. I don't know how else to say it. Like if you really want to do something, yeah, you'll just do it. There's no other way to do it. Another way to say it, right? And I think you already know that. Yeah. Besides the Nike stuff, I mean, like my biggest thing is actually just getting started, right? And so you just have to force yourself to get into it. And if you really want that, you'll make an effort for it. You'll find the time, etc.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
The guy who asked the question, he says he follows you on YouTube, and he suggests to make those short UI videos. They're really cool and useful.
Cool. Yeah, I love doing that. I'm gonna make a whole bunch in the coming month. I'm just gonna sit down. Like I said, I love looking at a dribble design, or maybe come up with my own design, something that just looks nice and sleek. Um, and yeah, I'll just clone it, and I need to get better at that as well. So Yeah, Andrija. Where are you from? I'll definitely do that.
Yeah, I don't know. Some people like for me. Sometimes I like long videos, sometimes I like short ones. So I think it's the hard thing is like when I was making. I have a couple other YouTube channels, and for one of them, I used to make long ones, and I also used to make short ones. And sometimes the ones I think you probably found this too. Sometimes the videos that you thought are not really interesting are really the most interesting for people.
For sure. That happens all the time. Like sometimes I'm like, this video is banging. I'm like, this one's gonna like blow up or something like that, and it doesn't. And it's not like a random ass video on the side, just like, oh, why are people interested in that? I spent no time making that. Yeah. But yeah, actually, I wanted to. You can just ask me whatever you want if you need. But one thing I just wanted to talk about was my very first video on Flutter because I actually used to make YouTube videos for math because, like I said, I was like a very into like math and teaching math and all that. Um, and this is before I knew Flutter and I really took coding seriously. I was just always teaching math and making like math videos, and it never really took off. Like it was like no one really viewed it, even though I was, I guess, confident in my math teaching ability. Um, and so that made me think a lot. And I really like Peter Thiel. He just the guy who made PayPal and one of those people. And I really like his theory, his book on 0 to 1, um, which is basically you can if you go one through n, you can iterate on something that is already existing. Like for example, there was already so many math videos out there that I'm just another math video, and you'll never find me on the front search page of anything unless you're like the best at it, for example. Um, so then when I was getting really interested in Flutter, like I said, I'm kind of like a hybrid of like a designer slash developer, and there's this particular like theme in the design community that was getting a lot of popularity, which was neumorphism, which some people might get sick of at this point. But at the time, which was like 5 years ago, yeah, 4 or 5 years ago or something, I wanted to make that neumorphic design, but on Flutter, like using Flutter code. So obviously I'll look at a tutorial online, but there wasn't a tutorial, but there was like design tutorials, like Illustrator, like using Adobe Illustrator, like, cause it's a design thing. Um, and so that's when I used that Peter Thiel thing. I was like, oh, like create something that doesn't exist. And so I just kind of looked at the neumorphic design, that tutorial that was in Illustrator, even though I don't know how to use Illustrator, but basically it was just adding a couple shadows. And I was like, yeah, surely Flutter you can add some shadows. And I just looked up how to add shadows. And so I made that video, and that video was the first video on my channel, like my new channel, and it hit different. Like, because I had made math videos before that, and so I know when a video kind of feels a bit different, like just the views I was getting. And so yeah, that got me pretty excited about it and kind of led me to this journey. And yeah, at that point I knew almost nothing about Flutter. I was like, I just want to make this neumorphic design. I was going in a holiday in San Francisco and stuff, so I was just like really in awe at like all these like tech companies and the whole dream and the whole shebang. And yeah, this is when I was like doing all the soul searching, and yeah, luckily Flutter was there for me.
I mean, now that you've been running this YouTube channel for quite some time, I mean, do you feel like having a YouTube channel actually help you to advance in your work, or
For
do you
sure.
feel, yeah?
It's only open doors. Like I think if you get past the sort of being vulnerable stage, like um, you especially for example if you're a coder and um you're judged on the quality of your work or your code, right? So it's like there's always going to be someone out there that's going to critique your work, and just when you get past that like discomfort phase, I think the only thing it does is open doors. And one thing I love is when it comes to like marketing a product or advertising like an app, you can do it the old school way where you take out ads, like you pay like Facebook ads or Google ads or whatever it is. And I kind of always call that like interruption marketing, where it's like someone would be scrolling and it's not an ad you wanted to see, but it's like just popped up because they paid money for that spot, and they have to do more convincing in that situation. Whereas if you have like a YouTube following or any following for that matter, like Twitter or whatever it is, TikTok, whatever your platform is, when someone follows you, they already have one foot through the door. Like they're already like a fan of you. So when you make something, there's less convincing to do because they already know who you are. So it's like I found that I love that sort of like organic style, like sustainable, like long term. like trustworthy. I'm not some like scam like app maker who's going to make some really bad habit tracker that's just going to have a bunch of ads and like you charge like a lot of money to just because you just want to make money off this customer. Like, you can kind of have a different relationship with them. But yeah, again, that comes just from being accountable, like putting yourself out there, and it's like a double-edged sword kind of thing. Because you're putting your name and face out there, and there's also this moment of truth. What if you are really not like in demand? Like, what if people actually don't like you, or don't like your personality, or don't like what you make? That can happen. But you'll never know if you don't make anything. Like if you don't put yourself out there. And there's never been a better time. I always tell this to like young people, but like there's never been a better time to create. And a lot of young people, including me, we consume a lot. Like you can watch Netflix, you watch YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube, and I always think about this like the ratio of how much you create versus how much you consume. And sometimes like we consume 100% of the time, like just sitting there, just scrolling TikTok or Netflix or whatever. And so lately I've been trying to, balance that ratio out and try to create more and consume a little less. And yeah, it's been working out, just never been a better time to just put your stuff out there and find the people. And it's so telling because Flutter is such a small, right now it's kind of big, but like it's still, I would say, relatively small. And in the past few years, it's definitely been small, but you can still find your people. And yeah, it's almost like the internet's kind of matured. Like you were always able to do this, but like you needed a couple platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, the whole journey to kind of mature, so that creators can actually, thrive independently without working at a big company.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel that like we also talked about this before too. Like compare Flutter now with like when you're learning Swift. To be honest, I know they're two different things, and maybe there's some other differences too. But I think the big difference is that it definitely is much easier to write Flutter app than it is to write a Swift app.
Right.
Sorry, there was no Swift back then. There was Objective C, so it's even more difficult.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just remember because I did try learning iOS a long time ago. It was not easy. But yeah, eventually I picked it up. But yeah, it took some time. It definitely was lots of rage quits going on.
It's very random, but what phone do you use? I'm very curious. I always ask someone this.
My main driver is iOS, and then I also have a what do you call this? The
Fold?
the Fold. Yeah,
Oh, nice. I was thinking about it the other day because like when the Samsung phones came out and like I saw all these different aspect ratios on the folds and I was like, oh, Flutter can definitely make this because it's an Android phone as well, right? So
yeah, because I think foldables have a future. Like for me, like I'm always like, you know what? I want to have an iPad because you want to show your friends something or you want to have more space to work on. But my pocket's only so big, so foldable is definitely what I really want. And so, yeah, I think that's gonna have some kind of future to it.
wow, that's really cool. That's really cool. Are you liking it?
Yeah, I'm trying to get into it more. Just like I don't feel like opening up all the time. Um,
Yeah.
Otherwise, and then also the other thing I don't like is that screen is actually too small when you fold it. The outside screen is not very big, so that's kind of the negative. If that one was a little bit wider, that would be much better.
I'm always curious with that fold that you have. I always love talking about phones and stuff, but like the whole in between, because when you open it up, the idea is you want to be more productive, right? Have a few apps on the screen, but like at that point, wouldn't you just sit on the computer? Like that's always my thought. It's like phone is full on the go, but I guess there'll be a situation where you're on the train, I guess, or something like that. You're Uber, and you want to like open up your mad phone and you start doing work. Like, I guess there's a case for that. What I guess it's what was your main motivation to buy it? Because it's a pretty cool piece of tech, I guess.
Like I said, I'm interested. I'm interested in having a phone, but also being able to open it and have a bigger screen. And I think there's some future into it for sure. Because, like I said, I think I'm not the only person that wants to be able to use it as a phone. And then when you need a bigger screen, you could just whip it open and you have a bigger screen when you need the more space.
Yeah, not for sure. I feel that like when I use an iPhone, like when I'm an iPhone user right now, and when I watch a YouTube video, and sometimes I want to write notes down, like I have to go completely out the app, like completely notes. It's like, oh come on, it's 2022. Give me like a little split screen at least, like. um,
Yeah, so you can only split screen with iPad, which I have over here. So I have my iPad Pro. This is a 12-inch. I also have the 11-inch too somewhere, the smaller one.
I have a iPad as well, and not to nitpick at the iPad, which I have, I just love this stuff, but the split screen is only in one sort of axis. Like, I can't have like horizontal rectangles. It's all vertical rectangles, which is not super useful for when you want to like write notes or something like that. But maybe that has to be a software fix. Like, it's not a hardware thing, so maybe they can get on that.
Okay. Yeah, I think I just have one last question for you before we wrap up because we're approaching the end. Well, we're approaching about an hour in. Yeah, I think my question is this: like, if I'm interested to do something similar to you, either to like to share what I learned, or whatever reason I want to make my own kind of YouTube channel and do some tutorials like you do, is there any kind of advice that you give to people that you think will help them on their journey?
For sure. I think one of the first things that is sometimes like you can do YouTube stuff, but like under a different brand name. Which is, if it's your brand, then that's cool. But I think it's really useful to have a channel and a presence with your name, like a individualized, like, easy to identify. It's like, oh, this person. I think that's what Elon Musk. I mean, he's great at a lot of things, but I think that's what he's really good at in terms of like exposure. Like, he doesn't spend any marketing money on his Tesla, but him himself is like such a big like presence. Even this is kind of slight tangent, but I watch a lot of soccer, and Manchester United is really bad right now, and it's like a huge club, and someone needs to buy the club, and Elon Musk comes out on Twitter like, "I'm gonna buy Manchester United," just stuff like that. Like, he doesn't mean it, but like, and it's his name as well, and so like his own sort of marketing, you identify with that person so well, and I think that's kind of what the internet is enabling with all these platforms. I have my own channel with my own name, and of course you can make more channels and more, other brand names and flying high with Flutter and all that. But I think just as an individual for yourself, I think it's good to have your own channel with your own name. um, so that would be probably my best advice. The other thing is to just start. Just, you'll never, there's a saying about I mean, not a saying, but a truth about one of those painters like Picasso or something. And we see like one painting that he's really famous for, but we never think about how many paintings it took to get there. And it's okay to just make rubbish for a bit. You know what I mean? Just sometimes you need to like grind out a bit of like dirty water for the clean water to come out. Um, and yeah, just probably the last thing is um, to not worry about like I guess a hater. If someone comes in like talking mad, like a lot of bad stuff to you and trying to demotivate you, just think about what their life is like. It's probably not as good as yours. They're probably just like that because just feel empathy for them. It's like, what must be going on in this guy's life that he come all the way to my Flutter video to, talk trash. So don't worry about it. Just do you, and yeah, just create. The last thing I just want to say on that is I love talking about waves. There's a lot of waves going on, like whether that's the internet and YouTube wave, and Flutter wave as well. Like, it's all, I feel like there's like a wave coming. I always look at the Google Trend search graph of like Flutter, and it's like almost exponential, and there's something that's like about to happen right now. And I always say, I live in Australia. There's a lot of surfing going on, and if you want to catch a wave and it's over there coming, you got to start paddling now. You can't, if the wave comes and you start paddling, it's too late. The phase would have gone past you. And so if you have some inkling in your mind of like, oh, I always wanted to start this thing, YouTube channel or whatever your endeavor is, just start like now, like literally like tonight. Just, you could record a video on your phone and just put up a video tonight. Like, it doesn't actually take that long at all. And with the whole, I'm also very interested in AI, and like with the whole automation stuff, the only thing that's going to be left for a human to do is just be creative. So if you're doing a job that's kind of very menial, like, let's do some creative stuff as well. Like, kind of feed your soul a bit. But yeah, I hope that answered your question. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Okay. No, I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think the hardest part about getting started is actually just getting started, just doing it, right?
Mm.
Don't get caught up in all the details of my microphone, my camera.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah.
some people get wrapped up in that, like for everything, not just about YouTube, but starting a business or learning Flutter or whatever thing. So I think that's a good point. Okay, cool. It was great having you on. Sorry to kind of cut this short a little bit, but I do want to get home and have my dinner pretty soon. I spent about 5 minutes at home before I had to rush out to the office. But I think we have a good episode today. So I appreciate your time today. Maybe I'll have you back on again. Maybe it'd be nice to have you and David on at the same time. I don't know. We could talk about that as a future episode.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Anyways, again, thank you for coming on, and it's good to hear about your journey.
Cool. Thanks, Alan. Thanks for being hospitable. See ya.